The Siege of Troy. History's most epic deception. What if everything you knew about ancient warfare was wrong? What if the greatest military victory in history wasn't won by strength, but by the most audacious con job ever pulled off? Picture this. A war that lasted 10 bloody years, fought over a single woman whose beauty literally launched 1,000 ships. Kings abandoned their kingdoms, heroes fell like dominoes, and an entire civilization vanished from the earth, all because one Trojan prince couldn't keep his hands off another man's wife. Welcome to the Siege of Troy, where reality became legend and legend became immortal. The scandal that started it all. Here's where it gets juicy. Paris, Prince of Troy, was supposed to be judging a divine beauty contest between three goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Instead of choosing wisely, this ancient playboy picked Aphrodite after she promised him the most beautiful woman in the world. The catch? Helen was already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta. When Paris eloped with Helen to Troy, he didn't just steal a wife, he triggered the ancient world's version of World War III. But here has the plot twist. Historians do want you to know. Some scholars believe Helen never even made it to Troy. Ancient sources suggest she spent the entire war in Egypt, while Greeks and Trojans slaughtered each other over a phantom. The powerhouse alliance. Menelaus wasn't about to take this lying down. He called in every favor owed to his family, assembling what amounted to ancient Greece's version of the Avengers. The coalition reads like a who's who of legendary warriors. Agamemnon, Menelaus' brother and the most powerful king in Greece, who brought the largest fleet, Ajax. A human tank who could hold off entire armies single-handedly. Odysseus, the master strategist whose cunning would make Machiavelli weep with envy. Over 1,000 ships carrying 100,000 warriors converged on Troy. To put that in perspective, this invasion force was larger than many modern military operations. The city that wouldn't fall, but Troy wasn't your average Bronze Age settlement. This was the New York City of the ancient world, a massive fortress city controlling the crucial trade route between Europe and Asia. Its walls were so legendary that later Romans claimed they were built by the gods themselves. Archaeological evidence suggests these fortifications were indeed massive, with walls up to 16 feet thick and 30 feet high. Mind-blowing fact, Troy was so wealthy that its treasury could have funded the Greek expedition for decades. The real prize wasn't Helen, it was economic domination of the ancient world's most profitable trade route. 10 years of ancient hell. What followed was a decade of brutal siege warfare that would make Game of Thrones look like a children's tea party. The Greeks couldn't breach Troy's walls, and the Trojans couldn't break the siege. Entire seasons passed with nothing but raids, duels, and political maneuvering. The war produced moments of shocking drama. Achilles dragging Hector's body around Troy's walls in a rage-fueled revenge rampage. Paris and Menelaus facing off in single combat to end the war. Spoiler, it didn't work. The death of Patroclus triggering Achilles' berserker fury that nearly ended civilization. The greatest military deception in history. After 10 years, the Greeks were exhausted, broke, and ready to quit. That's when Odysseus hatched the most audacious military deception ever conceived. Forget modern special operations. This was strategic thinking that changed warfare forever. The plan was insane in its simplicity. Build a massive wooden horse, hide elite soldiers inside, and present it as a peace offering to Troy. Then sail away, making it look like they'd given up and gone home. The fatal mistake here's where the story gets psychological. The Trojans had survived a decade of siege. They were suspicious, war-weary, and should have been smarter. Several Trojans, including the priest Laocoon, warned against bringing the horse inside. His famous words, "I fear Greeks, even those bearing gifts," became one of history's most prophetic statements. But here's the kicker. The Trojans' own success became their downfall. After 10 years of perfect defense, they couldn't imagine the Greeks being clever enough to outwit them. Pride, not stupidity, opened Troy's gates. The night everything burned, what happened next was ancient warfare's equivalent of D-Day. In the dead of night, Greek warriors poured out of the horse like a nightmare coming to life. They opened Troy's gates from the inside, and the departed Greek army, which had been hiding behind a nearby island, stormed back in. The sack of Troy was so brutal it became the template for every fallen city story that followed. Priam, Troy's elderly king, was murdered at his own altar. Hector's infant son was thrown from the city walls. Cassandra, the prophetess who had predicted it all, was dragged away as a prize of war. The archaeological bombshell. Here's what will blow your mind. Troy was real. In the 1870s, archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann discovered the actual ruins of Troy in modern-day Turkey. Layer upon layer of destroyed cities revealed that Troy was indeed burned and rebuilt multiple times. Troy the Seventh Aesius, evidence of violent destruction around 1180 BCE, exactly when ancient sources placed the legendary siege. Recent excavations have revealed that Troy was 15 times larger than previously thought, with a lower city that could have housed 10,000 people. This wasn't just a fortress, it was a Bronze Age metropolis worthy of a 10-year siege. The real legacy, the fall of Troy, marked the end of the Bronze Age and the beginning of a new world order. The Mycenaean civilization that conquered Troy would itself collapse within a century, plunging the Mediterranean into a dark age that lasted 400 years. But Troy's real power was cultural. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey became the foundation of Western literature, philosophy, and our understanding of heroism itself. Every war story, every tale of love and betrayal, every narrative about pride going before the fall traces back to those windy plains before Troy's walls. The ultimate irony? The city destroyed for Helen's beauty became more beautiful in memory than it ever was in life. Troy's destruction created something immortal, a story so powerful it still captivates us 3,000 years later, proving that sometimes the greatest victory belongs to the defeated. In a world where empires rise and fall in mere decades, Troy achieved something no conqueror ever could. It became eternal through its own destruction, ensuring that as long as humans tell stories, the siege of Troy will never truly end.